Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome you to this special press conference from the Senate minority. It's different from any other press conference and anything else that we've had during the legislative session. I'm very sorry to note the lack of media here today. The media during this entire session has bought the misrepresentations of the majority in both the House and the Senate and the governor in terms of not adequately explaining what our alternatives were in terms of budgeting. And many people have said, who speaks for us? Who speaks for the taxpayers and the businesses in our community? And no one to date has spoken for them. We have been given mutually exclusive decisions of whether to choose this tax increase or that tax increase, or to suffer from the lack of this service or that service. We're here today to present a true no alternative budget to the budgeting that has gone on. So we speak, in fact, for the taxpayers, the disempowered, and the small businesses, many of whom you saw come to the State Auditorium on Wednesday to testify against the general excise tax increase. No one to date has proposed cuts in the state's financial plan for either the remaining 3 months of this year or the 2 fiscal periods coming up. And I think that's a shame, because that's exactly what we need. Just to put it in perspective and to make it as simple as possible, we started with the base budget left by the Lingle administration, which was at about this level. The governor then presented his budget to the legislature, and I should say 2 months late, later than he was required by law, and his budget was nearly $800 million above what the base budget was. And so then the House and the Senate Finance Committee and Ways and Means Committee set about having hearings and talking about cutting. And what they were cutting was in this area here, from the extension by the governor from the base budget. No one cut down here. And in fact, that's exactly what needs to be done. We need to change the culture of taxation, spending, and debt. And in order to do that, you must seriously make real, meaningful cuts in programs and in personnel. If you don't do that, then the actions that are being taken today in terms of just cutting around the edges and snipping off a little here and snipping off there will leave us in the exact same position in fiscal 13, fiscal 14, fiscal 15, and so forth. In fact, the budget proposals to date, which raid either the Hurricane Relief Fund totally and or the Rainy Day Fund and other special funds, once those funds are gone, they are gone. They don't regenerate themselves. And all of the things that we're talking about doing are just stopgap Band-Aid measures to get us through, first of all, the next 3 months of this fiscal year and then the next 2 fiscal years. What's missing? The primary thing that's missing is economic growth, economic stimulation, business incentives. Not one majority party member, not the governor, has talked at one moment about providing incentives to create new businesses, new investment, new jobs in this community. Instead, we want to burden our overburdened taxpayers and small businesses even more, continually to redistribute what we have. We can't do that. No economy can do that. No state is doing that now. That's what's going on across the country. But we seem to think that we're immune to it. We seem to think that we can tax and spend ourselves into prosperity, though no culture in the history of the world has ever done that. We will not be the first to do that. So, what is required? What is required is, as I mentioned, a change in culture, a change in direction. My staff has been working on this project since day one of this legislative session. We have dutifully attended all hearings. We have tried, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, to get worksheets of documents. We listened to everybody's testimony, and in the end put together a document which is unique and unlike anything else here. And I want to tell you that while people always talk about you have to be very careful on any cuts you make, and you have to use a scalpel and not a meat cleaver. There are times in life, in business, in government, when the only thing that you can do is to have meaningful cuts. If a patient is in a hospital and the patient has gangrene, they don't talk about surgical cuts in an arm or leg. In order to save the person, they must remove the poison. That's what we've got to do in our programs today. We've got to have a longer-term program that doesn't just get us by, as I say, in the next 2 fiscal years. And even if we would see further reductions because of economic downturns or other events worldwide, it would reduce our revenues further. It would increase our deficit more. So what we have done is come up with the no alternative budget that in fact will take into consideration these contingencies, put us on a new direction to make meaningful changes over the years, to deal not only barely with the deficit now, but actually to change the direction so that we have possibly a surplus, or at least we've got the ability to make changes in the future. So while everybody was talking about just barely meeting the $1.3 billion, we are going to present to you now a budget that will actually save between $3.5 and $4 billion, so that we will not have to keep coming back or keep looking at this. There is no tax increase. There is no delay in withholding from people that are due their refunds. There are no additional special funds, and there's no raiding of the Hurricane Relief Fund or the Rainy Day Fund. We have looked at this objectively. We've looked at it carefully. We have other scenarios, but we are determined that actually we must make these changes, and we must make them now. So I'd like to, at this time, introduce 2 of our staff members who have been intimately involved in this. First of all, our Chief Budget Analyst, Mr. Eric Luke, and also our University of Hawaii intern and economics major, Troy Thompson. Gentlemen, present our budget.
Good morning. My name is Eric Look, and I am the budget analyst for the Senate minority. I'm here today to present the appropriations for our no alternative budget. For more information on how I came to these numbers, please refer to the items detailed in your packet. In the no alternative budget, we appropriated $4.4 million out of the general fund. In comparison to our base budget for fiscal year 2012 of $4.9 billion, that would represent a negative 10.48% change. In comparison to Abercrombie's budget for the general fund for fiscal year 2012 of $5.7 billion, it would represent a 22.39% change, a negative 22.39% change. In terms of the totals for fiscal year 2012, we have $9.1 billion compared to the base year budget, which is $10.2 billion, representing a change of 11.05% change. And Abercrombie's budget, which is $11.3 billion, representing a negative 19.79% change. For fiscal year 13, it's looking just as good. For the general fund, $4.4 billion for our no alternative budget. In comparison, we have our base year budget of $4.9 billion, representing a negative 10.6% change. For Abercrombie's budget of $5.9 billion, that represents a negative 25.28% change. And our total funding, our total appropriations for the operating budget of $9 billion, in comparison would be the base budget of fiscal year 2012 of $10.2 billion, representing a 12.3% decrease. Our Abercrombie's fiscal year 13 of $11.3 billion, representing a negative 20.4% change. Thank you.
You want to show that graphically? What it represents?
Graphically, this represents a decreased amount of appropriations for the fiscal years. Starting here would be where we were last year. This is our current year for fiscal appropriations. This is the year that we have coming up. This is what we have on the table. Abercrombie's budget's at the top. Our House budget is here. The Senate draft was recently released yesterday, and our budget is down here, representing over $2 billion worth of change. This graphically shows the change between every means of financing. The black lines represent Governor Linda Lingo's draft, which all of us use as our base budget, including the House and Senate. The red represents Governor Abercrombie's draft for fiscal year 12. The yellow represents the House's draft, HB 200, House Draft 1, fiscal year 12. And our numbers for the no alternative budget represents the blue columns. Thank you.
You want to go into a little bit more detail about what you actually did to cut those numbers, to reduce those numbers?
Okay. In order to reduce these numbers, what we originally started off with was a core budget. We reviewed what the city and county's plan was for in case of a county-wide government shutdown. These included fire, police, departmental environmental services, and emergency management and transportation. We also reviewed what it would be like in case of a federal government shutdown. And based on these two items, or based on these two things that we researched, we came up with a list of core things that would happen on a statewide level. These were what we considered absolutely necessary to keep our government running. After that, we realized we couldn't just keep ourselves at an absolute bare bones level. We would actually have to add both high priority and low priority non-core items. Based on these items is how we came to our budget. This would cut a lot of the fat spending that currently makes up our budget. Some of the things that are in our no alternative budget includes a restoration of certain furloughs throughout the government. It depends on, or that all depends on their purpose, the purpose of the program. This includes an increase in government efficiency, anything that promotes an increase, anything that promotes small business growth, or just business growth in general, and anything that promotes transparency within the government. We did not raid any kinds of special funds, whether it be the Hurricane Relief Fund, the Tobacco Special Fund, or the Rainy Day Fund. All federal losses of federal stimulus funds are taken into account. And it is important to note on the last page of your press packet for the memo that we are actually losing approximately $250 million worth of federal stimulus funds. What the legislature has done this past year with their drafts in each respective house was increase our spending to try to make up for the deficit or the lack of stimulus funds. We realize that sometimes we can't necessarily continue our spending. So that is why a lot of times we denied the requests to increase these general fund spendings in both fiscal years.
Mr. Thompson, did you want to add anything about your research?
Well, it's all pretty self-explanatory as far as if you follow what we've presented to you. I just
Step up to the microphone.
Oh, gladly. Yeah, I just helped Eric with various research and number crunching, and yeah, what we've presented to you here we feel is pretty well explanatory. You also might want to notice this is the breakdown of the funding that we have presented. Although it doesn't show particularly a size comparison, this pie chart would be rather smaller than Governor Abercrombie's pie, so to speak, if you were to think of it in that sense. But We have pretty well laid out graphs here, and we really like this one. This really exemplifies what we've been doing, and it all started with going back to the core government function. Should everything go to that state, you know, of course the private sector and the public sector would both take significant hits, and going from there we went and we looked at what's core, absolute core to life necessity, and we made sure we had that, and then we prioritized. You know, we spent weeks upon weeks of going through finding what was core, non-core but high priority, low priority, non-core, and you know, just luxuries and everything. And from there we crunched the numbers department by department, program by program, and really tried our best to be fair yet conservative with, you know, what is necessary and what is a luxury. And from there, you know, it's just numbers. We add, subtract, tried to be as equitable as possible, but you know, just as in the private sector, people will take their hits as in the public sector, and I think people need to understand that was really the main point in our cuts. You know, try to spread the equity. You know, you have a fairly secure job in the public sector. Private sector, you know, it's really performance based. You really got to put out, and you never know that tomorrow's news could be, you know, put you on the street to find a new job. So that's really where we came from. The numbers are there. We'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the numbers, our facts that we got, and the research. And yeah.
Question?
Yes.
Are you going to release the detailed budget
Oh, definitely. I forgot to mention that.
We'll get that to you.
Yeah, we're gonna get that to you, of course, and also we're a little behind on getting it up online, I'll be honest, but we're working very hard to get every last detail online correctly and in a great detail and order so that it's right the first time. We're gonna make sure we got our graphs, our overall worksheet, what we've, you know, this whole, I guess, philosophy on our cuts and everything, where we're coming from, why we did that, and just our strategic plan. We're going to get that online to an actual website, correct, Mel? Yeah, we're going to create a minority Senate cut website. You can see what we've done, where we're going, and what we hope. And really, we're just trying to spread awareness to the public, you know? We really need just to have someone out there to bring up this whole point, get some awareness, get some traction in the community, so that we're not just going in a one-lane road.
When can we expect that website up?
Well, we have the information given our, you know, Senate legislative sessions really knuckling down. In all fairness, a week at the latest. Hopefully, before Monday or Tuesday, we'll get it up. I mean, we have all the information. It's just compiling it, putting it up online, and I think most people can understand that that'll take a few hours, if anything. It's just coordination between Eric, Sam, and Mel and myself, and we'll get it up as soon as possible.
So people want to know, are you going to cut jobs?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
So how many people's jobs are you going to cut, and did you say something about furloughs? I wasn't clear on the furlough part, if you're still on furloughs or
Well, our furloughs, yes, we would like to keep that as much as possible. According to the most recent projections on the consulate revenues, it seems as if we're not quite out of the hole yet. This would require everyone to make a combined effort to tighten their belts, as Sam has mentioned before in the past. In terms of the amount of jobs cut proposed by our budget, we propose just shy of 2,000 jobs.
And then what sectors are those in?
I can get those details to you.
And then I know when you were working on this budget, you were talking about if something had a matching grant or federal money attached to it, you didn't cut it. Is that right?
That's correct. As much as possible, we tried to lure as much federal money into our state as we could. In terms of matching federal funds, a lot of times the general funds were what we used to create the matching, and if it made sense for us to use our general funds to bring in this additional federal income, then we used it. However, it is important to note that sometimes the percentages and ratios didn't quite make sense. For example, if we're putting out $100,000 just to attract $5,000 of federal money, then that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so did you also look at cutting salaries, or I mean, I know that's not something that, I think that's something the governor has to push, but
Right.
did you
For the people that have jobs, they will retain their salary as of fiscal year 2011.
And then, I guess from what Linda Smith said at your press conference, about 1,000 people a year retire off of payroll. There's 45,000 employees, so 1,000 years. That's 2,000. That's your 2,000 if you took it over 2 years. Are you talking about immediately cutting them, or are you talking about doing it over the next 2 years?
This would be in just the first fiscal year.
In
Fiscal year 12. That's correct.
So in theory, it could be
In
about
comparison,
1,000 people.
in comparison, the House or the Senate, I'll take that back. The Senate draft proposes 540 cuts of jobs. Many, I think, almost all of which were actually vacant positions. They have requested information from every single department and asking about vacant positions that have been vacant for more than 6 months. These positions were analyzed and put onto a table in which we don't have access to. Our Senate minority does not have access to. And it's been determined that 540 jobs are vacant and deserve to be cut.
So that would be included in your 2,000, or is that another 2,000?
Oh, no, that would be as part of our 2,000.
Now, my understanding is that we have contractual relations with our labor force within the state government. Is it even possible for department heads to reorganize their departmental efforts and restructure jobs without interference of unelected third parties?
That would require me to do more research, although if this is a policy question, I would like to refer that to the good senator.
Especially with this right to work bill that we've been putting out.
Well-
I guess we'll.
Oh, any more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want you to
Let's
finish
get
your
all the.
Oh, okay, just real quick. What are the departments that you cut the most, and what was your philosophy on that? I read a little bit about the core services, but what department did you? 'Cause,
The
when
only
we were talking about-
actual department that we
Yeah.
completely cut was the
Uh-huh.
office of the lieutenant governor, with the exception of the enforcement of info practices.
There are
Okay.
two programs within the Office of Lieutenant Governor.
Mhm.
There's LTG 100 and LTG 150. 150 is the as Troy mentioned, the Information Practices
It's the
Office.
sunshine, transparency.
From what I understand, there are quite a few states within our union that does not have an office for the Lieutenant Governor.
And then the next department with the most program cuts would be agriculture, followed by DBED and the labor department.
There are quite a few programs that include federal funding, and without more information and research, I wasn't able to cut them, or the federal funding or general funding that we. Yeah.
So these are the main offices, the Lieutenant Governor Schatz will be happy to hear about this.
Yeah.
And then you left information practices, but where's the Office of Elections? Is that under his office?
That is not under his office. Yes.
The furloughs that you mentioned, how many days actually are you restoring? 2, 1, 3?
We either went with a yes or no. So it's either keeping what we have right now consistent, or we just restore their furlough
All
in its
24 of
entirety.
them. Either you keep all your furloughs of 24 days off, furloughed, or if we decided that the federal funding was beneficial in a cost-benefit analysis, we restored all 24 days.
So you go specifically with which grouping or which department? or
Yeah,
which kind of service?
based on the service and the
Do
funding.
do you guys have ending balances? What are the numbers at the end of FY1? I mean, 11, 12, 13, how much money is left over?
In terms of,
In terms of the balanced budget, you're gonna have a positive right now, we're in a negative. When you run your numbers, what kind of ending balances might you guys have?
well, right now we're currently not balanced, right? How much would you say that we're not balanced by? I cover that 1.3 billion in 1 year. Is that only for general funds?
You cover 1.3 billion in 1 year, FY11 or 12?
FY12. In terms
11's on the way out. It's
So you're gonna have a huge.
is this 1.3 billion in only general funds, or is this 1.3 billion in the total funds?
General funds.
Okay, well, it would probably take, at this rate, it would probably take approximately, I'd say, 4 years, going according to this plan, to cover that $1.3 billion of deficit in our general funds.
assuming tax rates stay the same, no fees, nothing like that is increased.
But you said you're gonna get the numbers out as you develop it.
That's correct.
I noticed that in one point you said that, think about the Lieutenant Governor's office, there are states in our union that don't have certain functions. How much of that did you look at? What other states are doing, what we could do?
It'd be difficult for me to determine. That would require me to look at every state's individual budget, and that's something I honestly did not have the resources or time or manpower mainly. I mean, I'm just one person. This is my this is my helper Troy. He's so in order to go through the budget for all 50 states, that would require a significant amount of time. I've already went through the budget more than 10 times, and every single time that it's required me to flip through the page to read almost every single line item, that would be about 5 to 8 hours. So.
So it sounds like in the Lieutenant Governor's office cuts, you did compare to other states, so there was some comparison?
There was no comparison, sorry.
Oh,
Just a basis of an idea, concept that we see, that we are like-minded with.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Just a further point. We don't suggest that this is the only alternative or that this is a panacea for all our problems. What we do suggest is we want a different direction, and this is the only proposal to seek a different direction and to make sure that we have major and meaningful cuts. I'll answer part of Ms. Zimmerman's question also. I was very bearish on cutting major departments and programs, including the Department of Business. And as everyone knows, I come from a business background. That is my advocacy. The Department of Business and Economic Development, quite frankly, if it disappeared tomorrow, most in the business community wouldn't know anything about that. It has become a big department with a lot of attached agencies, a lot of different functions, and the primary function, to have business and economic development, somehow is lost in the shuffle. That's what we need, but we don't need a department to do that. In terms of the health department, there, again, are so many different programs that the health department is involved in. They have to be carefully looked at, but nobody wants to look at them because the elected officials all have constituencies, and most of these folks are good folks, but they're unionized. And as we saw the other day by the sham of the governor negotiating unilaterally with the HGA and saying it was a 5% decrease, and we learned later that in fact it's a 2.5% increase with 9 more days off, paid days off. We have to be honest in the figures that we give the public. We have to be honest in what we're looking at. So this is an ongoing work in progress, as my Democratic colleagues like to say. But we want to have a paradigm shift. We want to move in the direction of looking at less government, less employees, less expenditures, and prioritizing and looking at core functions as every single mom, every family, and every small business has to do. So I thank you for your participation today. We had hoped to have that information up online today. I'll make sure we get it before next week. We'll get it in the next couple of days. And any questions, we'd be very happy to try and answer. Aloha, and thank you for coming.